Ah, the reassuring smell of holy incense, the comfort of the Gothic servitor choir, and a rare moment of pure calm. All these attributes make the inner sanctum of the Chapel of the True Faith intoxicating for me. I stand as motionless as the Gothic sculptures and statues adorning the columns holding the chapel's roof above my head, bathed in the light from one of the numerous arch windows the inner sanctum had to offer. The warmth of the sun touched my skin, a blessing comfort which shakes me from my impassive regard for the world beyond the glazed frame. I catch sight of a reflection in the glass, that of a warrior with stoic features whose face I recognize. The reflection is my own. I shift my torso to address myself, with a low hum from the power armor encasing the rest of my body. I am Queso Maximus Gaius, though few address me by the first two names, as those who are aware of them are scarce, and those permitted to employ them rarer still. My true title is Marshal Gaius of the Black Templars, commander of the Knights of Dawn and hero of the Imperium of Man. I am over 200 years old, or at least I believe so. My service record states 183 years of active duty in the name of the Emperor. I know I underwent 10 years of training as an aspirant in the chapter keep of Purging before I was accepted as a neophyte to partake in the eternal crusade to ensure mankind's dominance of the galaxy. I was 7, perhaps 6, when I was first taken there, but in truth I cannot recall any memory of being that boy. All I share with him now is his name. Marshal Gaius is who I am, and he is a Black Templar, and therefore who I was beforehand may as well have never existed at all. I equally remember little of my first years in combat before I earned the right to wear the black power armor of a true Templar. While in subsequent years many commended my endurance as I lay clutching my ruptured stomach, sliced open by heretic mortar shrapnel, while continuing to slay foul followers of Khorne as they rushed to desecrate my flesh while I still lived. I have no recollection. I remember not the battle, the pain, or my acts that day. I only recall that for giving voice to my suffering, the initiate overseeing my training, Brother Alias, assigned me to fast and pray for 3 weeks upon recovery from my display of weakness. No one in my squad spoke to me until our next campaign on Anthenios II began, and Brother Verus took up stewardship of me. Brother Alias's lesson was well taught, for every blow directed towards me only solidified my hatred for the unclean enemies of man, and saw them slain all the quicker. I left the Anthenios II campaign with the Reclusiarch's blessing, and the right to be endowed with the Black Carapace. Again, my accomplishments are a mystery in my mind. I am no more connected to them than a man reading my after-action report, stored somewhere in the vast vaults of the Hall of Records. Yet I do remember, as I walked amongst my squad in armour for the first time, they greeted me with the embrace of a handshake, as they never had before. I reminisce the nods of respect as they uttered the word, brother, with a pride as vivid as the sun before me now. Thus forth, my memory of the next century of service is both obscure and vivid. So many foes felled, so many deeds and acts of devotion in the name of the Golden Throne had occurred, but I often forget exactly when and where they had come to pass. Of course, there are always exceptions, such as when I stood atop the ruined rebel bunker at the conclusion of the battle for the Silcus Bridge, bolter in one hand and the company banner in the other. An entire army joined me in roaring their praise to the Emperor for the victory as I waved the black cross of the Templars over the destroyed enemy fortifications. I've never felt such joy in triumph. My rise through the ranks of the Sword Brethren, the elite of the chapter, was swift from then on, but not without sacrifice. The squad I had joined and bled alongside for most of my years of service is now no more. Brother Alias, dear Brother Verus, and so many others were granted the Emperor's peace long ago. Upon assuming the honoured title of Marshal, while many a brother fought loyally and faithfully at my side, there were no longer any whom I could embrace as a friend. I have often pondered as to if this is the Emperor's will, for a commander must be willing to sacrifice his men should the objective require it. Victory demands rationality over compassion. But the sum of my life is not moments of personal glory, the memory of those who came before me, nor the tragic fate which befell the brothers who fought with me. Gaius is so much more than that. The foundation of the chapel where I now stand rests on a peak overlooking the city of Mariopolis, the capital of a world which shared its name. When first dispatched to the Mariopolis minor system by the High Marshal himself, I had reacted with surprise at this decree, expecting our faith and strength would be needed to combat the Despoiler's Black Crusade, given the worsening situation at Cadia. Naturally, though, I obeyed Helbrecht's orders without question, and his wisdom was well-founded. Upon the arrival of our crusade to Mariopolis, all appeared in order, save a low-level conflict against traitorous rebel factions. With each cell brought to the sword, however, my brethren and I uncovered a sinister truth. These rebels, while allegedly fighting for local causes and concerns, in truth served a cult of Slanesh, one which had infiltrated and was guarded by the very governor and his lackeys, who were appointed specifically to ensure the will of the Emperor and his Imperium was preserved on this world. Such fools had thought the decadent powers of chaos to be a sensation of amusement and wonder, failing to recognize this cult sought the downfall of Mariopolis, as it had become a vitals resupply hub for Imperial forces fighting in the Maelstrom. Such a region was engulfed in conflict and racked by rising heresy in the wake of Red Corsair attacks. This was where these heretics had originated from. With bolter, blade, and fury, I led my brothers to destroy this nest of corruption. The governor's palace, though no longer fit to bear such a name, was razed to the ground. The heretics and the traitorous fools who harboured them cleansed with flame. I recall their screams as I looked out at the smoke rising from the city below, marking the trail of our advance, not far from where I now stand. Within weeks, the remnants of the heretic movement were smashed. Having successfully purged Mariopolis, I was invited by the Administratum to commend those who had remained loyal to the Emperor in a ceremony for the benefit of the local population. I walked down the line of assembled men, stopping to be informed of the deed of each. Upon hearing this, I provided a nod of approval, and then saying nothing more, walked on to the next man. To receive such recognition from a Knight of Dawn was enough to ignite a visible swell of pride or an inflation of ego for all present. Finally, I came to an individual who was the definition of unremarkable. I regarded this frail specimen as his deeds were announced. Unlike the other men, he had not fought nobly, nor had he killed many a heretic during the purge. The act that merited his presence before Queso was the safeguarding of imperial scripture and their distribution to the population, even after the governor's ban of such holy words, and local law enforcement had imprisoned the man's family, inflicting numerous horrors upon them. Finally the man met my gaze, only for him to fall to the ground and begin weeping profusely. "For whom do you weep?" I had growled, assuming such an act to be a sign of weakness and lack of control over his emotions. He looked back up towards me, his eyes filled with tears as he stammered, "My lord, I prayed to him for salvation, but I never dreamed his angels would come." This was all the man could say as he continued to sob into his hands. But it was then Queso understood. This man had borne witness to evil of the ruinous powers, but had kept his oath to the Emperor, where others had chosen the safety of compliance. He had faith that his moral devotion to the Imperium would be rewarded. I was that faith. It was I who had made manifest the purging of the evil permitted by his despotic rulers. I had brought about the salvation which was promised in the scripture this man had sacrificed so much to preserve. In that moment I extended my hand so he may rise, which was humbly accepted, and I decreed to the assembled masses the faith of this man would be forever rewarded. I vowed to found a chapel, so that the sons of Mariopolis' faithful may look up in awe of a heraldic cross upon its spire, and seek to spread that faith in a crusade across the stars as one of the Black Templars. The roar of adulation echoed in his ears, and now, many months later, the chapel was established. New aspirants had been vetted and assigned to the chapter's training programs. The streets beyond the window are now vibrant, where they had once been in flame. The security provided by my brothers, seeing trade and prosperity return to Mariupolis city. By extent, the system of Mariupolis Minor had seen an influx of refugees arrive from across the northern fringe, tens of millions now able to settle where they were once wretches adrift in the rancid bellies of overtaxed aid vessels. Such people were now set to work, feeding the conventional forces of the Imperial Navy and the Guard as they came to refit and recruit before returning to the Maelstrom war zone. My work here is done. It is time for me and my brothers to leave and spread the light of the faith to new worlds. Our expended munitions have been replenished. The necessary navigations and strategies have been prepared to execute our new orders, and now my prayers of thanks for victory won and for the victories to come have been offered in this holy place. I am Queso Maximus Gaius, the bringer of salvation to the faithful, and the coming oblivion to the heretics and Xenos who oppose me, for as a Marshal of the Eternal Crusade, I can do no less. I am a Black Templar, and this shall forever be our creed. No pity, no remorse, no fear.